The auction of despair the night was heavy with smoke and strange smells. Fires burned in iron bowls, throwing shadows across the alien slave market. Chains rattled as frightened slaves were pushed onto a raised wooden stage. Dozens of alien buyers sat below, their eyes glowing, their claws tapping, their voices whispering prices. It was a place of fear, a place where no one was free. Among the slaves stood a young alien girl. Her body was thin, her skin pale, her hair tangled from weeks in a cage. Unlike the others, she did not lower her eyes. She stood silently, her chin slightly lifted, even though she trembled inside. Her spirit was weak, but not broken. She had once been part of a proud family, but now she was nothing more than a number in the auction. One after another, the auctioneer shouted prices. A strong male was sold for weapons. A woman was sold to be a servant. Another was taken for mining work. Each sale brought laughter, shouts, and cruel bargaining. The buyers wanted strong hands, young bodies, slaves that could bring profit. But when the girl was pushed forward, the crowd grew quiet. The auctioneer shouted her name, her race, her price. No one answered. The buyers stared at her, then shook their heads. She looks sick. She will not survive work. Not worth even a coin. The auctioneer grew angry. He lowered the price again and again, but still no one raised a hand. The girl felt her chest tighten. She knew what happened to those who were not sold. The unwanted ones were thrown away, abandoned to die in the wastes outside the city. The girl's legs shook. She felt her strength leaving. For weeks, she had prayed for rescue, for someone to save her. But now she understood no one wanted her. She was worthless in their eyes. The crowd laughed cruelly. Some buyers shouted jokes. Give her for free. Better feed her to the beasts. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to cry. Lifted her chin higher as if to say, I will not let you break me, even at the end. The auctioneer's face twisted in rage. He raised his hand, ready to strike her for wasting his time. Then, suddenly, the crowd went silent. A voice spoke. Calm, steady, but filled with weight. I will take her. Every head turned. At the back of the market stood a human. He was tall, his face half hidden under a hood. His eyes were sharp, his steps firm. No one had seen him before, yet his presence filled the air with something strange. The auctioneer blinked in disbelief. You? You want this one? The human walked closer. He pulled out a small pouch of credits and dropped it on the table. The sound of coins echoed through the silence. Gasps spread through the crowd. A human buying a slave. Why this one? She is useless. He is mad. The girl stared at him, confused. Her heart beat wildly. She had never seen a human before, not this close. Why would one of them, a stranger, step forward for her? The auctioneer hesitated. He could not understand it either, but money was money. With a bitter laugh, he unlocked the chains around her wrists and shoved her forward. She is yours, human. Take your trash. The girl stumbled and nearly fell, but the human caught her gently. His hands were firm, not cruel. For the first time in months, she felt warmth instead of pain. The buyers muttered angrily. Some laughed, some shook their heads. But no one dared to challenge the human. Something about his calm stare silenced them. The girl looked up at him, her lips trembling. She wanted to ask why, but no words came. He gave her a simple nod and whispered so only she could hear. You are safe now. In that moment, her world changed. She had been left unsold, unwanted, ready to be thrown away. But a human, a stranger, had stepped forward. And in the darkness of the slave market, for the first time, a small spark of hope lit. Inside her heart, a human's choice to slave market was still buzzing, with whispers long after the human had left with the girl. Some laughed, others cursed, but all were unsettled. Nobody could understand why he had paid for someone who was considered worthless. To them, it made no sense. To the girl, it felt even stranger. Her wrists still ached where the chains had been. But now, the metal was gone. She walked beside him through the dusty streets of the alien city. The night air was cold, filled with strange lights and voices from merchants and thieves. The human said nothing. His steps were firm, steady, as if he already knew where he was going. The girl's mind spun with questions. Why had he chosen her? What did he want from her? Every slave was bought for a reason: work, profit, or worse. She tried to stay calm, but fear coiled deep inside her. Finally, she gathered the courage to speak. Her voice was soft, broken from lack of use. Why me? The human did not stop walking. His eyes scanned the shadows as if he expected danger. He answered simply, without looking at her. Because no one else would. The words struck her harder than a whip. She stared at him in silence. No one else would. That much was true. But why should he care? They reached the edge of the city, where an old transport vehicle waited. The human opened the door for her. She hesitated, half expecting a trap, but his expression was calm, not demanding. Slowly, she climbed in. Inside, the air smelled of metal and oil. It was not comfortable, but it was cleaner than the cages she had known. He started the engine, and the machine hummed to life. As the city lights faded behind them, the girl felt the first touch of freedom. Though she did not believe it yet, hours passed in silence. The stars spread across the sky, shining through the dusty windows. The girl's eyes grew heavy, but she forced herself to stay awake. Trust was dangerous. Sleep could mean chains again, the human noticed. He reached into a small pack and handed her a flask of water and a piece of dried bread. Eat, he said. Her hands trembled as she took it. She had not eaten real food in days, but still she stared at it, unsure. Was this kindness real, or just a trick before cruelty began? Seeing her hesitation, he spoke again, his tone even. It's not poisoned, just food. You need strength. Her hunger finally won. She bit into the bread, swallowing too quickly, almost choking. The human glanced at her, but said nothing. For the first time, her empty stomach felt full. After eating, she sat quietly, holding the flask against her chest. Her mind whispered warnings. Do not trust him. Do not believe in hope. Hope always breaks. Yet, a small voice inside her whispered something else. Maybe he is different. The road stretched far, and soon the vehicle slowed. They stopped near a deserted outpost. The human turned off the engine and set up a small fire outside. The cold wind stung her skin, but the flames brought warmth. He handed her a blanket. Rest, you're safe here. She froze, staring at him. Safe. No one had ever used that word for her. She wanted to laugh at the lie, but his eyes were steady, not mocking, not cruel. She slowly wrapped the blanket around herself and sat near the fire. The human sat across from her, sharpening a blade with quiet focus. His movements were calm, controlled, but she sensed danger around him, not toward her, but against anyone who might try to harm them. Finally, she spoke again, her voice trembling. You could have bought anyone. Strong ones. Useful ones. Why me? He looked up at her. The firelight reflected in his eyes. Because everyone deserves a chance to live, even you. Her chest tightened. For a moment, she could not breathe. No one had ever said such words to her. To the slavers, she was worthless. To the buyers, she was nothing. Yet this human spoke as if her life had value, but doubt still burned inside. She whispered bitterly, And what will you do with me? Make me serve you. Make me work until I die. His answer came firm, almost sharp. No, I don't want a servant. I don't want a slave. He leaned closer, his voice quiet but filled with steel. I want you to live. Nothing more. The girl's eyes widened. She had no reply. Her heart pounded with fear and confusion. Could he really mean it? Or was this another trick she would regret believing? The fire cracked between them. The night stretched long, filled with silence. She lay down under the blanket, pretending to sleep, though her eyes stayed open. She watched him sit guard through the night, never once lowering his weapon, never once looking at her with cruelty. And as the stars turned slowly above, she felt the smallest spark of something she had not felt in a long time. Not trust, not yet, but maybe, just maybe, hope. First night of fear, the fire burned low as the night stretched long. Cold winds whispered across the barren land, carrying the smell of dust and silence. The human sat with his back straight, his weapon across his knees, eyes fixed on the shadows beyond the firelight. He did not move much, only shifted slightly when the wind grew stronger. The girl lay under the blanket, her body curled tight. Her eyes were half closed, but sleep would not come. Fear clung to her like another chain. She had seen too much cruelty to believe in kindness. She had seen too many smiles that hid sharp blades. Her heart whispered warnings. Do not trust him. He is only waiting. When you close your eyes, he will show his true nature. She turned slightly, peeking at him. His face was calm, unreadable, lit faintly by the fire's glow. He looked like a soldier, disciplined, dangerous, but not cruel. That difference confused her. She wondered if she should run. The night was cold, but freedom was worth the cold. If she could just find a hiding place, maybe she could survive alone. But then her stomach twisted with hunger. Her thin body trembled from weakness. She knew the truth. She would not last long without food, without shelter. Still, fear pushed her. Slowly, carefully, she slid out from under the blanket. Her bare feet touched the hard ground. She held her breath, watching him. He did not move. His eyes were still on the dark horizon. Step by step, she crept away from the fire. The shadows swallowed her small frame. The blanket slipped from her shoulders, falling soundlessly. Behind her, she reached the edge of the firelight, her heart pounding like a drum. Just a few more steps, and she would be free. But then, where will you go? His voice cut through the silence, calm, steady. Not angry, not loud, but certain. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned. He had not moved from his place by the fire, yet his eyes were on her. Sharp and knowing. She tried to speak, but no words came, only silence. The human tilted his head slightly. Out there, you'll die before sunrise. The hunters, the cold, the beasts, you won't make it far. Her lips trembled. Better to die free than live as a slave. He studied her, then nodded once. That is your choice. But I didn't buy you to make you a slave. She stared at him, stunned. The words felt impossible. No one ever spoke that way. She shook her head. Then, why? Why me? He answered the same as before, firm but quiet. Because no one else would. And because you deserve to live. Her knees weakened, and she sank down, hugging herself. The fear in her chest battled with a strange warmth she did not understand. She wanted to run. She wanted to believe. She wanted both at once. The human stood slowly and walked toward her. She tensed, expecting him to strike or grab her. Instead, he bent down, picked up the blanket she had dropped, and draped it back over her shoulders. You are cold, he said simply. Then he turned back to the fire. Her eyes widened. Not believe it? No shouting, no punishment, no chains. Just a blanket. Just kindness. She sat there, frozen, until finally her legs carried her back to the fire. She sat opposite him again, the blanket tight around her shoulders. For the first time, the flames felt warm instead of threatening. The human did not speak. Much after that, he sharpened his blade, then set it aside. His eyes never left the dark horizon. He seemed less like a master and more like a guard standing watch. She wondered, was he protecting her? Hours passed. The girl's eyes grew heavy. Her body begged for rest. She tried to fight it, afraid of what might happen if she closed her eyes. But the warmth of the fire, the food in her stomach, and the weight of the blanket pulled her down. Just before sleep took her, she whispered in a broken voice, If I close my eyes, will I wake? The human glanced at her. His answer was short but strong. Yes. Her eyes fluttered shut. For the first time in months, she slept without chains cutting into her wrists. The human sat in silence, watching. The night, strange sounds echoed from far-away alien cries, shifting winds, footsteps that did not belong to humans. He gripped his weapon tighter, his body tense. Ready? The girl slept deeply, unaware of the dangers. At dawn, the first rays of light touched the land. The human finally allowed himself a long breath. She had survived the night, and though she still feared him, though trust had not yet taken root, the first barrier had cracked. For the first time, she had slept not as a slave but as someone protected. A bond in silence. Morning light spread across the land, painting the barren ground with pale gold. The girl woke slowly, her body stiff, but warm under the blanket. For a moment, she forgot where she was. No chains, no cage, no slaver shouting in her ear. Only silence, the crackling of the dying fire, and the soft hum of the human's transport vehicle nearby. Then memory returned, and fear rushed back. She sat up quickly, scanning for danger. A key set on the human. He was sitting a few steps away, checking his weapon, his face calm and steady. He looked up briefly, then nodded once. You slept. His words were simple, not mocking. She blinked, unsure how to answer. No master had ever cared if she slept. She only gave a small nod. The human stood, kicked dust over the fire to put it out, and motioned to the vehicle. Come, we still have far to go. She hesitated, but followed. Her legs still trembled from weakness, but he did not rush her. When she stumbled, he slowed his steps. Not once did he raise his voice. Hours passed as the vehicle rolled across the dusty plains. The girl sat quietly, her hands clutched in her lap. She watched him drive, his eyes always scanning the horizon, his body tense like a soldier ready for attack. She realized something: he was not afraid for himself. He was watching for her. The silence between them stretched, but it did not feel empty. It felt strange, heavy with unspoken words. She wanted to ask more questions, but fear still locked her tongue. Finally, she whispered, "What is your name?" He glanced at her briefly. "Elias." She repeated it softly. Eli. As. The name felt odd in her mouth, but warm. She lowered her eyes. I had a name once, before they took it away." He slowed the vehicle and turned to her. His voice was steady, but serious. "Then take it back. Speak it. It is yours." Her throat tightened. The slavers had always called her by a number. They had beaten her if she tried to speak her real name. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a trembling whisper, she let it out. "My name is Saren." Elias nodded. "Saren, that is a strong name." Her chest ached. She had not heard her name spoken kindly in years. Tears burned her eyes, but she turned her face away, hiding them. The journey continued in silence, but it was different now. Not heavy with fear, but softer, like the first drops of rain after drought. At night, they stopped again near rocky hills. Elias built another small fire. This time, Saren did not try to run. She sat near the flames, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. After a long time, she spoke again, her voice low. My family. They were farmers. My mother sang when she cooked. My father used to carry me on his shoulders. I thought we were safe. But raiders came. They burned everything. They took me. Her hands shook as she spoke. She had never told anyone before. The memories cut like knives. But Elias listened without interruption, his face calm, his eyes steady. When she finished, her voice broke. Since that day, I have been nothing. Just a number. Just a thing. Elias leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. You are not a thing. You are Saren, and you are free now. The words struck her heart. Free. Could that truly be possible? She stared at him, searching for lies, but found none. His face carried no greed, no hunger for power. Only truth. The fire crackled between them. For a long time, neither spoke. Saren hugged the blanket tighter, feeling a warmth inside her chest she had not felt in years. Later that night, Elias handed her a small piece of metal, shaped like a coin. This belonged to my brother, he said. He carried it for luck. He died in the war. I kept it. But maybe you should have it now. Saren's eyes widened. She held it carefully, as if it might break. Why? Why give it to me? Because? You need it more, Elias replied simply. Her throat closed with emotion. No one had ever given her anything before, not without expecting something in return. She clutched the coin to her chest, her heart racing. That night, as the fire faded and the stars burned bright above, Saren lay awake, thinking of his words. For the first time, she did not fear him. For the first time, she believed he might truly see her as more than a slave. In the silence, a bond had formed. Fragile, small, but real, and those shadows of her past still haunted her. A new thought whispered in her heart. Maybe I am not alone anymore. The return of hunters back in the slave. City anger spread like fire. The slavers gathered in the market hall, their faces twisted with rage. Word had spread quickly. An alien girl no one wanted had been bought by a human. To most, it seemed foolish, but to the slavers, it was an insult. He mocked our trade. One hissed, slamming a clawed fist onto the table. He paid for trash. Another growled. If others see this, they may think we sell weakness. The human must learn. No one takes what belongs to us. The decision was quick. They would send hunters cold, skilled trackers who never failed. The order was simple. Bring back the girl, dead or alive, and make an example of the human. Far away, Elias and Saren traveled through the rocky wastelands. The air was sharp, filled with dust that stung the throat. The transport vehicle rattled across uneven ground, moving steadily toward safer lands. Saren sat quietly, the coin he had given her clutched in her hand, though her body was weak. Her spirit felt a little stronger now. For the first time in years, she dared to imagine a future beyond chains. But deep inside, fear still lived. Shadows of her past whispered that freedom never lasted. Elias, at the wheel, seemed to sense her unease. He glanced at her. You're thinking too much. Saren lowered her eyes. I don't know how to think of tomorrow. I never had one before. He nodded once. Then we'll build one, step by step. She stared at him, confused, but warmed by his words. Yet the small peace between them would not last. The hunters moved fast. Lean, reptilian creatures with sharp senses. They rode sleek speed bikes across the wasteland. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark, and their weapons gleamed with cruel promise. They followed tracks, studied the dust, and sniffed the air. Slowly, the trail of the human and the girl unfolded before them. "They cannot run far," one hunter hissed. "The girl is weak. The human will slow." "Then we take them tonight," another replied, clicking his weapon into place. That evening, Elias parked the vehicle near a canyon wall. The rocks gave cover, and a small stream nearby offered water. Saren helped gather sticks for the fire. She moved slower than Elias, but refused to sit idle. He noticed and gave her a small nod of respect. They ate quietly simple, dried food. Nothing like the meal Saren remembered from her family's farm. But even the plain taste felt rich to her now. After dinner, Saren sat near the fire, staring at. "Do you think freedom can really last?" He looked at her steadily. "Only if we fight for it." The words stayed with her. She thought of her parents, of their farm, of the raiders who destroyed everything. Freedom had been stolen from her once. Toa, could it truly be taken back? Before she could ask more, Elias suddenly raised his head. His hand went to his weapon. "What is it?" Saren whispered. "Quiet," he said softly. His eyes narrowed, scanning the dark. His soldier's instincts told him danger was near. The canyon wind carried faint sounds, low engines, the hiss of machines, the crunch of rocks under heavy feet. Saren's chest tightened. She recognized that sound. Hunters. Elias stood, moving quickly to douse the fire. The flames vanished, leaving only the cold glow of stars. He motioned for her to stay low behind the rocks. Saren's hands shook. "They've come for me," she whispered. Elias crouched beside her, his voice firm but calm. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Her eyes widened. No one had ever said such words for her before. Fear and hope crashed together in her chest. The hunters drew closer. Yellow eyes glowed in the shadows, scanning, searching. Their speed bikes rumbled softly as they circled the canyon. One dismounted, sniffing the air. His voice was harsh. "The girl is here. I smell her fear." Saren pressed a hand over her mouth, trying not to breathe too loud. Her body shook violently. She felt the same terror she had felt in the cages. But this time, she was not alone. Elias crouched above her, his weapon steady, his eyes locked on the approaching hunters. He moved like a man who had faced death before and did not fear it. The lead hunter raised his weapon, scanning the rocks. "Come out, human," he called. "Give us the girl, and maybe we will spare your life." Elias's voice cut back, cold and sharp. "She is not yours. She never was." The hunters laughed cruelly. "You cannot fight us all." Elias tightened. His grip on his weapon, his jaw was set, his stance unshaken. "Try me." Saren's breath caught. In that moment, she saw him not just as a stranger, not just as the human who had bought her. He was something else, something stronger, a protector, a shield. The hunters began to spread out, circling. The night grew heavier, filled with the scent of danger. Saren clutched the coin he had given her, her heart pounding. For the first time, she prayed not just for survival, but for Elias to win. The silence broke as the first hunter lunged forward, and the battle began. The humans stand the canyon fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the first hunter leaped forward, claws flashing in the moonlight. Elias moved instantly. His weapon fired, the sound echoing against the stone walls. The hunter dropped, his body twisting as dust rose around him. The others snarled. There, yellow eyes burning brighter. They spread out, circling Elias and Saren like wolves. Saren crouched behind the rocks, her heart racing so hard she thought it would break her chest. She clutched the coin he had given her, whispering her name to herself like a prayer. Saren. I am Saren. I am not a number. Elias stood tall, his stance calm, his eyes sharp. His weapon glinted in the faint firelight as he shifted it from one target to the next. He was alone, but he did not look afraid. A second hunter lunged, firing a plasma bolt. Elias rolled to the side, the blast hitting the rocks, spraying shards into the air. He came up on one knee, fired once, and the hunter crumpled to the ground. Human, one of them hissed. You cannot protect her. She is ours. Illnesses. Voice was like stone. She was never yours. Two hunters attacked at once, charging from opposite sides. Elias moved fast, blocking one with his blade and firing at the other. Sparks flew as claws scraped against metal. His strength was not in raw power, but in precision. Every strike, every movement had purpose. Still, the hunters were many. Their speed bikes roared in the background, their shadows darting across the canyon walls. Plasma fire lit the night with flashes of blue. Elias dodged, countered, but a blast grazed his arm, blood darkened his sleeve. Saren gasped. She wanted to scream, to run to him, but her body was frozen with fear. Elias did not falter. He gritted his teeth and pressed on, his blade slicing through another hunter's weapon, sending sparks into the air. His eyes burned with fury not for himself, but for the girl hiding behind the rocks. The hunters regrouped. Their leader, taller and stronger than the rest, stepped forward. His voice was low and cruel. You fight well, human, but one man cannot stop the many. Hand her over, and we may leave you alive. Elias wiped blood from his arm and tightened his grip on his weapon. You don't understand. His eyes locked on the leader. She is not my possession. She is free. And I will not let you take her again. The leader snarled, raising a massive blade. Then you will die for her. The battle exploded again. The leader charged, swinging his blade with brutal force. Elias blocked, sparks flying as metal clashed. The impact rattled the canyon, forcing Elias back a step. But he held his ground. The other hunters circled, waiting for an opening. Plasma bolts flew, carving glowing scars into the canyon walls. Elias twisted, deflecting one strike, dodging another. He fought with a mix of steel and fire, his body moving with the memory of a soldier's training. Saren watched, trembling. Every strike felt like it landed on her own heart. She could not sit still. She picked up a small rock, gripping it tightly. It was useless against weapons, but she needed something, anything to help. The leader slammed his blade down, nearly striking Elias's shoulder. Elias staggered but countered with a quick shot to the side, forcing the leader back. Still, the fight was wearing on him. Sweat ran down his face, and his wounded arm bled steadily. One hunter slipped past and lunged toward the rocks where Saren hid. She cried out, stumbling back. The hunter's claws reached for her, but Elias was there in an instant. He slammed the hunter to the ground, his blade cutting through the dust. His body shielded hers, his breath heavy. Saren's eyes widened. He had turned his back to danger just to protect her. More hunters closed in. Leah stood again, raising his weapon, his voice sharp with command. Stay behind me, Saren. The hunters attacked all at once. The night filled with light, sound, and fury. Elias fought like a man possessed, every strike fueled by something more than survival. It was not greed, not pride. It was protection. One by one, the hunters fell. The leader fought hardest, his massive blade carving scars into the canyon floor. But Elias matched him strike for strike, his determination unbreakable. Finally, with a roar, Elias drove his blade forward, disarming the leader and forcing him to his knees. Dust and silence filled the canyon. The remaining hunters, seeing their leader fall, fled into the night on their speed bikes, their yellow eyes fading into darkness. Elias stood over the leader, breathing hard. His voice was cold as ice. "This ends here. She is free." With one final strike, the battle was over. The canyon grew quiet again. Elias staggered, dropping to one knee, his wound bleeding freely now. Saren rushed to him, her hands trembling as she tried to press the cloth of her blanket against his arm. You could have left me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why risk your life?" Elias looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. "Because no one else would. And because you are worth it." Her chest broke with sobs, not of fear this time, but of something new, something powerful. Gratitude. Hope. For the first time, Saren truly believed. This human was not her master. He was her protector, and maybe her family. A new beginning. The canyon was quiet again, the echoes of battle fading into the night. The bodies of the fallen hunters lay scattered in the dust, their glowing eyes now dim. The sharp smell of burned metal and blood lingered in the air. Saren knelt beside Elias, pressing the torn blanket against his wound. Her hands shook, but she refused to let go. "Stay still," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, stay with me." Elias's face was pale, his breathing heavy, but his eyes stayed sharp. He gave her a faint smile. "I'm not leaving. Not yet." Tears slid down Saren's cheeks. She had never begged anyone before, not when the slavers beat her, not when the buyers mocked her. She had always held her pain inside, too proud to show weakness. But with him, the fear of losing was too strong. For the first time, she allowed herself to care. When dawn came, the light painted the canyon in soft gold. The night's terror faded under the sun, though the memory remained sharp. Elias stood with difficulty, leaning against the rocks. Saren helped him climb back into the transport vehicle. She was small, weak compared to him, but her will was unbreakable. They drove slowly, leaving behind the battlefield. Dust trailed in the air, and silence hung between them. Yet it was not the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of survival, of two lives bound together by choice. Days passed. Elias's wound healed slowly under Saren's care. She cleaned it with water, bound it with strips of cloth, and stayed awake at night to keep watch. Sometimes, when he was too tired to move, she took the wheel of the vehicle. She had never driven before, but Elias guided her patiently. "You learn fast," he told her. She looked at him with surprise. No one had ever praised her. I only try. That is enough," Elias said simply. With every mile, Saren felt stronger. The thin, broken girl who had once stood on the slave block was changing. She was still afraid, but inside her, a fire had started to grow. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Elias stopped the vehicle at the edge of a valley. Below, a small settlement spread out lights, glowing softly, smoke rising from chimneys. People moving freely without chains. It was not grand, but it was safe. Saren's breath caught. "What is this place?" "A haven," Elias replied. "A place where runaways, survivors, and the lost can start again." Her heart raced. A new beginning. Could it truly be possible? They entered the settlement slowly. Eyes turned toward them, some curious, some cautious. A few nodded in respect when they saw Elias. Others whispered when they noticed Saren, her thin frame, her frightened eyes. But no one raised a hand to hurt her. No one called her worthless. For the first time, she walked among others without chains. That night, Elias spoke with the settlement leaders. Saren stayed close, nervous, but listened. He asked for a place to rest, for supplies to heal. the leaders agreed, though one looked at Saren with doubt. She is weak, the leader said quietly. She will slow you down. Elias's voice was steady, unshakable. She is stronger than you think. She has survived more than most of us. The words pierced Saren's heart. She had never thought of herself as strong, but Elias saw her differently. And that vision began to change how she saw herself. In the weeks that followed, Saren started a new life. She worked in the gardens of the settlement, planting seeds, watering crops. The soil reminded her of her family's farm, and though tears sometimes blurred her vision, she kept working. Each plant that grew felt like proof that life could return. Even after ruin, Elias trained the fighters of the settlement, teaching them discipline and tactics. He never spoke much of his past, but Saren could see the scars of battles long gone. Yet in this place, he seemed lighter, as if a burden had finally lifted. At night, Saren and Elias often sat by the fire together. She practiced human words, and he listened to her songs from her people's language. Sometimes they spoke of pain, sometimes of dreams. Slowly, the silence between them became trust. One evening, Saren looked at him and whispered, "Back at the auction. I was nothing. No one wanted me. I thought my life had ended." Elias turned to her, his eyes steady. "You were never nothing. Just couldn't see your worth. But I did." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not only from sadness. She smiled faintly. "You gave me back my name. You gave me hope." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You gave yourself hope, Saren. I only stood beside you." The stars burned bright above, scattered like silver fire across the dark sky. Saren looked at them and, for the first time, did not feel small or forgotten. She felt alive. The girl who had once been left unsold, unwanted, abandoned to die, was gone. In her place stood Saren, free, strong, and no longer alone, and beside her stood Elias, the human who had stepped forward when no one else would. Together they faced the unknown future, not as master and slave, not as rescuer and rescued, but as family,